Hello and welcome. Welcome to our webinar on harnessing the power of older workers. Long-term unemployment for older workers is on the rise, and new data shows us that almost half Australian businesses are reluctant to recruit older workers. So today we're going to be doing a deep dive into how our organisations and corporations can challenge that and work with our older workers to keep them employed and to keep them focused. So I'm welcoming you, and on behalf of all of us, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of our land, our elders past, present and emerging. I'm with you today on Gadigal land, but for many of our participants, we're scattered right around the country. So we pay our respects to all the elders, past, present and emerging as well. And I welcome you all to this because this is a very interactive, although somewhat distanced, webinar. And we also think about our Victorian friends who have been just released from isolation. And we acknowledge that it's been a tough couple of weeks for you. So we hope that you can sit back and enjoy. Being part of this webinar, of course, if you'd like to put in a question, please put it into the chat box. I think by now we all know how that works. I'll certainly keep my eye out for those questions along the way. I want to thank everybody who's engaged today in putting this webinar together. We have Auslan interpreters, and we welcome them and thank them for their service with us today. Now what I would like to do in a recorded video is introduce our new Minister in New South Wales, the Honourable Natalie Ward, who is the Minister for Multiculturalism, Seniors, Veterans and Sport. And we have a pre-recorded video from the Minister.
Hi, I'm Natalie Ward, the newly appointed New South Wales Minister for Seniors. Welcome to today's webinar, Harnessing the Power of Older Workers. At present, approximately 22.5%, or around 1.9 million people in New South Wales, are aged over 60, including my mum. By 2031, around 2.4 million people in New South Wales will be aged over 60. People are also living longer, healthier and more active lives, and consequently choosing to continue working longer. As a society, it's important we foster age-friendly work environments in which older people are valued for their skills and experience. In this respect, I'm pleased to say that late last year, the New South Wales Government launched Ageing Well in New South Wales, our Senior Strategy 2021 to 2031. This whole of government and community strategy importantly focuses on responding to the challenges older people face, including in the workforce, with over 85 initiatives spanning 4 key areas. Firstly, living in age-friendly environments. Secondly, participating in inclusive communities. Thirdly, staying safe, active and healthy. And fourthly, being resilient and informed. I look forward to working with all of you to champion age-friendly work environments. I commend this project and thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Good to have you, even if by video. I'd now like to introduce one of the movers and shakers in the ageing space, the Honourable Dr. K Patterson, the Ageing and Disability Commissioner, to launch the program.
Thank you very much, Kathryn, and I was delighted to see the video from Natalie Ward. I know she's getting on a plane going somewhere, and it's a shame you can't be omnipresent when you're a minister. I know how that feels. I also want to acknowledge the Kulin Nation. I'm speaking from Melbourne, and acknowledge their owners, the traditional owners, past, present and emerging. And thank you for your kindness about those with locked down in Melbourne. Those others of you who are there, we haven't quite been freed. We're allowed to go 25 kilometres from home this weekend, but we can go to a restaurant. We can't visit people in their homes. So we're still a bit tied up. I'm delighted to welcome everyone today to the launch of the Australian Human Rights Commission new Older Workers Online Resource Hub, which was developed with support from the New South Wales Government. And I want to acknowledge all those who've been involved in that, my team and those in the New South Wales Government Department who've been working together to produce this material. As Age Discrimination Commission, I've made it my priority to address three major manifestations of age discrimination: elder abuse in the community, older women's risk of homelessness, and age discrimination in the workplace. My role is to advocate that we challenge ageist stereotypes that lead to prejudice and in turn can result in age discrimination. Again, I'd like to acknowledge the support of the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice, not just in developing this hub, but have worked with us throughout my whole time as the Commissioner. So it's been a wonderful partnership. The hub contains a number of free resources for employers and employees, including some online training modules, fact sheets, and practical guides. As Australia's population ages and our health span, the number of healthy years in older age increases along with lifespan, organisations need to be prepared and have strategies in place for employing and retaining older employees. There are barriers to employing older workers. Unfortunately, age discrimination in the workplace is a significant problem in Australia. It can occur at a number of points: the point of recruitment, as well as in relation to opportunities for training, promotion, and also to access to flexible work practices. Age discrimination can affect how strategies around retirement are approached. And the report for the third Joint Australian Human Rights Commission and Australian Human Resources Institute survey, which we released just a couple of weeks ago, and it's a survey of human resource professionals, and it's called Employing and Retaining Older Workers, was released in April and is on our Australian Human Rights Commission website, gave us some really interesting insights into what's happening out there in terms of employing older people. While the full report can be found there, I'll just give you a summary of a couple of the key findings. Now, there's been a satisfying ongoing drop in the number of organisations who say definitely or probably have an age above which they are reluctant to recruit. Most of these changes were due to an increase in those who answered maybe rather than definitely not or probably not. It was heartening to see an increase of 14% since 2014 in the number of people who recognised that the departure of older workers causes a loss of key skills or knowledge. However, it's unfortunate that there's been little or no increase in organisations who capture corporate knowledge as older workers transition out of the workplace. It's also concerning, and this is really concerning, that the perception of what constitutes an older worker has shifted to a younger age over the three surveys. We saw a marked increase in those selecting 51 to 55 as an older worker. There was also an 8% drop in those selecting 61 to 65 as older. Age discrimination remains, and it's widespread. Now, valuing older workers has benefits not only for individuals, but also for organisations, our society, and also our budget bottom line. There are wellbeing and job satisfaction benefits for employees who feel their knowledge, skills, and contributions are valued. For organisations, the flow-on effect is reduced absenteeism and turnover, with the associated reduction in costs related to recruitment and loss of corporate knowledge. With 5 generations in the workplace currently, for the first time in history, we need to develop and implement strategies to harness the power of older workers. This hub provides information to assist employers and employees recognise the value of older workers. Overall, there's been some solid gains, but we've got a lot more work still to be done. Thank you.
Kay, thank you for that fantastic introduction and for the launch of these fabulous resources. I commend them to all of you. I mean, you can find them on the Australian Human Rights Commission website, because this is a really important part of the process of engaging the broader community. As chair of the Ministerial Advisory Council on Ageing, we've been around, and I've been around for a number of years, the whole issue of the ageing workforce. And reflecting on that, I thought from the time of first settlement, of white settlement in Australia, the government of the day has always decided that the best way to improve the workers, if you like, or to encourage the growth in the workforce is to bring more people to our shores. Now, we've watched in our generations from the Second World War on, the numbers of immigrants coming to our country. But COVID has put an end to that. And have been growing every year by about 3%, certainly in the capital cities of Sydney and Melbourne. And that's mainly been due to our immigration. Rather than looking at the resources and the workers that we have to hand. And that's the challenge before us. So let me introduce to you now 3 experts, are all from a different field, but all of them engaged in working with and thinking about the engagement of the older person in the workforce. I'm delighted to welcome to our panel and our webinar today, Anna Llewellyn I'm just going to give you a brief introduction and they'll introduce themselves and tell you what they do. Anna Llewellyn, who's joining us from Westpac, Jane Baker, who's joining us from the Department of Customer Services in the New South Wales Government, and Toby Dawson, who is from the Illawarra Retirement Trust, IRT as it's fondly known. Anna, I'm going to hand over to you now to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and what's happening in the world of banking and finance.
Thanks, Kathryn, for the warm welcome. It's absolutely wonderful to join you all today. I've been at Westpac for 10 years and have held a number of roles across sort of branch distribution through to HR, and currently I look after the strategy around the bank's complaints program. And I am a registered psychologist and have been so for 13 odd years. But what brings me here today is that I, along with Belinda, are a co-chair of an employee action group called Amplify. And Amplify is all around our employees who are aged over 50. It's a volunteer grassroots group at Westpac. And we really focus on all those strategies and initiatives that will help our 50 plus cohort to say, stay and strive at Westpac. So I look forward to contributing some of our ideas that we're working on at Westpac, but also to hear some ideas from the group today that might sort of inspire some more of our initiatives at the bank. Thanks, Kathryn.
Thanks, Anna. And it's good to see that one of the major corporations of this country is taking this issue very seriously. Jane, I'd like you to introduce us and tell us what's happening in the Department of Customer Services and some very innovative programs that you have.
Thank you, Kathryn, and it's a pleasure to be part of this, this panel and to be able to share my passion. So I'm an occupational therapist is my background, and spent many years working with patients across very diverse caseloads, but really loved working in aged care. So really loved bringing about change for our older residents. I've been with CIRA now for 7 years, and CIRA is one of the organisations that is part of the Department of Customer Service. And my role there is helping to bring about the best outcomes for injured people in our CTP and workers' comp schemes. The hat that I wear today, though, is that I am the chair of the Generations ERG, one of our employee resource groups at the Department of Customer Service. So similar to Anna, we are a volunteer grassroots group. We represent the voice of the employees at DCS that are 45 plus. So that's around 40% of Department of Customer Service, which there's around 4,000 of us at DCS that are 45 plus. And our oldest worker at the moment is 81. So we look forward to sharing with you some of the things that we're learning and growing and developing. But our hashtag is life stage, not age, living, learning and earning longer. And that's what I'm really here to promote today.
Jane, thank you for that introduction. I love that, life stage, not age. Isn't that wonderful? We might be talking a little bit further about that. But to introduce now for our third speaker on the panel, Toby Dawson with IRT. Toby, over to you and tell us a little bit about what you're doing too.
Thank you very much, Kathryn, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So my name is Toby Dawson. Got a background in public health and then postgraduate in social impact. But I'm here today in my role as Head of Strategic Partnerships at IRT Group, where I've had the pleasure of working with Kathryn and the MACA group, as well as Dr. Patterson and the Australian Human Rights Commission over the last half a dozen years. And probably the primary, I guess, introductory piece I'll talk about there is the team at IRT called Age Matters. We're the social impact initiative of IRT Group, with a vision that no older person is homeless, isolated or without purpose. And with specific reference to today's panel, we've actually got a strategic priority to enhance the lives of older people through helping them to find a job and purpose. So over the last 6 years, working with MACA and the Human Rights Commission, we've done a number of programs about increasing mature workforce participation rates and advocating on behalf of mature workers around why they should have a role where they can fulfill their purpose in today's workforce. So thank you very much for having me and looking forward to today's conversation.
Thanks, Toby. And if you're just joining this live webinar, I'm Kathryn Greiner. I'm chair of the MACA, the Ministerial Advisory Council on Ageing, and we're talking about harnessing the older worker in our workforce. And we'd love you to join us on the chat room, which as I think you will know by now, you find that at the bottom of your screen, and that just chat that, because we'd like to answer some of your questions and the questions that you might have in your organisations about harnessing the talent, the skills, the expertise, or growing the talent, the skills, and the expertise of older workers in our workforce. So we've got a few on the screen already, but so Toby, I'm going to actually throw to you for the very first question, which is really along the lines of, as I just scan down to the screen, how do you have that conversation with an older worker without being discriminatory, without making them feel that you are singling them out, so it's meaningful, about their thoughts and plans for the next stage of their life? What would be some of the tips that you might give us for that?
I like this question, Kathryn. If you can indulge me for a little minute, I'll share a bit of my own personal background working with an older worker. So I started with IRT Group as a 30-year-old, just as the late Susan Ryan, the former Age Discrimination Commissioner, had spoken at the National Press Club in Canberra and put forward this idea that we get bowel scans for our health, we get breast cancer mammograms for our health, but we never do anything for our career health. What are we going to do about it? And I remember having met Susan, she was an amazing person, took me under her wing in some regards with this issue. I remember reflecting one day and I realised, you know what? I've discriminated because of age. I am one of those young hiring managers that is doing exactly what's being called out here as an inappropriate way to act in the workplace. I'm determining something on someone's age, not their stage nor their ability. And I don't know if this is the right forum here to share that, but the reason I bring it forward is it's around, I think, an authentic conversation. You need to be genuine, you need to be respectful. And I think in any trusting relationship, it's really important to show a level of vulnerability. I think that patronising conversations or condescending ones that really put an older worker out as someone that needs to be critiqued because of their age is because we are looking at them through that lens. If we slow down and have a genuine trust-built relationship with someone, it opens the door to have those conversations. So when I was recruiting for a position, not long after that moment of reflection, an application came through the door. His name was Peter Brady. He was 68 years old. He'd formerly been the head of an office for the ACT government. He had a decade's worth of experience leading up a peak body in the not-for-profit space as a CEO, and he could have run rings around me professionally. When he came into the interview room, he'd applied for a coordinator role, which was to report into me, and we asked, "What are you wanting to do?" His line was, "I have done my time of service, of stress, of management. I'm wanting to keep working. I want to keep fulfilling a purpose. Because if I don't do that, I've spent all of this time building up this crescendo. I'll drop off a cliff and have no purpose, nothing to get out of bed for. And emotionally and personally, that will be significantly impacting on my welfare." So having that conversation really genuinely at the interview room just was really impressive. And it meant that when Peter came in to work with us, we essentially did what we called a reverse internship. But for those of you that remember the movie The Intern, he was Robert De Niro, I was Anne Hathaway, and we had quite an open joke around that. But he taught me inordinate amounts of things around how the soft skills or managing a board or delivering governance. I was able to assist him with some of the more practical skills like Excel spreadsheets or web-based ticketing systems that he had never done, because they weren't around when he was on his career progression. But we built a really genuine relationship where we were wanting to help each other. Because I think if you can put that vulnerability out there, you can be honest, you can open up that conversation and that platform for why are we wanting to do this, you're going to go a long way with working with older workers, because at the end of the day, age is irrelevant. They're just other people that are, yearning for exactly what we're all yearning for: a bit of respect, a bit of trust, and a bit of acknowledgement.
Toby, thank you for that. In our Q&A box, we can ask your questions, folks, in the Q&A box or the chat, whichever you feel comfortable using. We've got a question that's suggesting that there was interest the other day to see some statistics on ageism in a survey on AI recruiting software. Could anyone comment on these softwares and if there might be embedded technology that can filter out on age, and if we should be doing something about that potentially hidden method of discrimination? Toby, I'll get you to comment on that, and then Anna, I might get you to make a comment on that as well. Is there a way to filter out in the application process the question on aging?
Yes, I think there is, and I'm not an expert on AI software, so I won't speak specifically to that, but to the principles that you've raised, definitely. We know that a lot of software or online application portals ask for someone's date of birth, a candidate's date of birth. Now, when you're hiring someone, the date of birth is really irrelevant, subject to the candidate having Australian work rights status, which can be a tick box, it can be a statutory declaration. We don't need to know a date of birth because, unfortunately, for many of us, we have got unconscious bias, which is what I think when I was discriminating because of age, it was an unconscious bias. If you go to the ARI report that Kate, the Australian Human Resources Institute report that Kay referenced in her introduction, the younger workers are rated as having greater career ambitions, technical capabilities, and physical capabilities. Those career ambitions sometimes create a blind spot for that unconscious bias. So when those dates come through, it really triggers it. So my suggestion would be remove the questions around date of birth. And also for candidates, we don't need to know the years that qualifications were there or necessarily the years of service in terms of date to date, but knowing that someone was, say, a chair of a committee for 9 years, that's really important that they've got such a long-standing period of leadership. Doesn't matter when that took place, because a lot of these skills and capabilities will withstand the test of time.
Thanks, Toby. Anna, I might just take your view on that coming from a very large organisation like Westpac.
Yeah, look, I think I echo Toby's points around there's certain information that isn't required, and we're always conscious around that unconscious bias. I think it's more highlighting those key skills for the role, and having a CV that goes all the way back to the beginning of your work experience is not always necessary. We often find that people highlight the sort of roles they've had in the last few years as a key way of articulating their experience for a role without actually having to document from the very first role onwards, which can often be an indicator of age. So I agree with Toby. It is something that there are certain information you don't need to include because they are protected characteristics. So yeah, absolutely, just focus in on those particular skills and relevant roles that you've had for the role that you're applying for.
Thanks for that, Anna. Our next question comes from one of our webinar participants, viewers. I always go viewers and readers. I think they're all the same. So the question is, thanks for the time today. I have colleagues who say that referring to an aging workforce, quote, implies that we will not be recruiting younger people, and there isn't any reason for the average age to increase unless we reduce recruitment, end quote. How do you recommend we respond to this type of opinion? So Jane, I'm going to throw this one at you. In the Department of Customer Services, in a government department, how would you deal with that?
So the question is, are we focusing on recruiting older workers at the expense of recruiting younger workers? And I think that there is that tension. but there is plenty of work for all of us. As you mentioned, Kathryn, the immigration is changing, so there's plenty of work to go around, and I think we need to leave that battle. That narrative is not helpful. I think it's really important that we look to making sure that we bring the best person in for the job, regardless of age. So I think we do need to be very careful about making this a them or us argument, because that's actually not the end point. Diversity in the workforce, we know, is when we'll get much better outcomes. We work with diverse customers, so it's really important that we reflect the communities that we serve, particularly as a government agency. So I think it can't be at the expense of another group. So, and that's certainly what this narrative, not what this narrative or this conversation is about.
Yeah, thank you. You know, the raising the issue about AI also sort of lifts the question about digital skills and the digital age that we live in. And I'm just wondering what steps an organisation can take to encourage older workers to learn new skills, because let's face it, we are in a digital age and we all have to keep our skills up, and we have to adapt with the changing times. So Anna, I wonder how we can do that without making them feel discriminated or threatened in any way.
Yeah, I think some of the mantra we use in our employee action group is really around, it's not about a job for life, it's about skills for life. And the way we deal with this at Westpac is we very much focus on having a growth mindset. So this is for any age, this is for all employees, to really bring a growth mindset to all that we do. We have quarterly structured sort of motivate conversations, we call them, and they're our sort of quarterly performance conversations that always start with, you know, behaviours first, followed by what people are delivering in their role, and then what is the career conversation that hangs off the back of that. So really, I think if we can start to think less about the job and more around the skill sets that we are attaining through our careers, then it really helps us navigate the transferable skills, which is kind of what we're dealing with within digital change and some of the transformation and disruption that we're seeing. So the more we can encourage people watching today or within our own organisation around thinking of your skill set rather than the jobs that you do, it makes that transition to perhaps new jobs and new areas a lot easier, because we're used to talking about the skills that we have.
Can I just jump in to extend on that, Anna, because I agree 100% with what you're saying. I think we've got, if we were to bring in a new employee or a new starter that had 100% of the capabilities or skills required for that role, it's extremely rare. So we always bring someone into an organisation with a preparedness to set out an onboarding plan or an orientation plan, which upskills them in those areas where they've got deficits. For some unknown reason, we have got a serious concern the moment there's a technological deficit. You know, a lot of the older workers, they may have a technological deficit, but also let's think about the fact that this era are the people that invented the internet. They invented computers. Yeah. They're the fastest growing cohort on social media. Yeah. So we've actually, it's a transferable skill that if we were to slow down, map out the 10 capabilities that they've got to have for those jobs. Yes, tech might be one, but the other 9 they've built over a career. You know, there's going to be a much quicker speed to capability program if you set that onboarding plan out. Plus the number of people that can support an older worker with that technological upskilling in a workplace these days is far above, you know, those that could support with a leadership upskilling, for example. So I think if we slowed down and set those capabilities out, we'd realise the deficits that come to a workplace with an older worker are far less than those that come with a younger worker.
Toby, and thank you, Anna, as well. But you've also triggered something interesting in my thinking here. And I'm responding to one of the questions that's come on board as well, which is we're talking about people who wish to upskill, who really to see that they've got, you know, a good, they might be 55 to 65 and they've got a good 20 years of work still left in them. But what if people are resistant to developing those technological skills that are necessary to do their job? Have you had exposure to that, Anna? And Jane, you might have come across this, and Toby, I'll just throw it open to anyone who wants to jump in here, because I think that's, for an employer, it must be particularly difficult when you've got a worker who really just doesn't want to upskill.
Yeah, look, I might just jump in there. I think this is why we spend so much time focusing for all employees on a growth mindset. And it's instilling that natural curiosity to learn and continue to learn through all of our careers, regardless of our ages. The natural curiosity and this tendency towards a growth mindset starts to open the doors to new skills. And I think in terms of how you can, you can't, it's a skill and will age-old question that we all deal with in any kind of role. So if someone doesn't want to learn, there's not a lot you can do there, but I think we can pique people's curiosity. I think we can start to describe that the gap isn't as big as perhaps what the mindset is worried that the gap is too big. And sometimes it's the language that we use, and that's why we feel that breaking things down into what's the skill gap rather than the job, because it can feel like it's a big step away from what I do today. That next job looks too big. But when we break it down into sort of smaller skill conversations, the gaps actually aren't too as big as we think. And so that natural curiosity just to test and try and have a supportive, business that is there to support and see people develop in that way is super important from an employer perspective.
And I thank you for that, because I think that what you're suggesting there is to walk them through the fear of failure. So many older people fear that they just don't have any sense of understanding the thinking behind the digital technology, and consequently move away from it rather than break it down, as you say. Yeah, and run towards it and understand that it's a skill more than anything. Jane, I'd be interested in your comments too.
Kathryn, I do have another insight to add. And I think if I received a phone call the other week and I have a problem with my staff. They're doing a great job and they're really motivated and they love their job, but they're not engaged. When I asked what they were, well, they're not learning new things and they don't want career advancement. And I think sometimes we need to reset. For some people, maybe they are very rigid with their view, and maybe picking up technology may be something that we're really not going to bring about change in. But I think it's important to focus on, are they doing a good job? And if that's the case, it's a little bit like role redefinition and a little bit of flexibility with roles as well. So sometimes it's about accepting what people can bring to the table. We work as teams, and I think there can be a little bit of adaptability and flexibility as well, because if we try and push people too hard, I'm totally with you, Anna, but I think sometimes it's a recognition that, that person is a fabulous worker. They do their core duties really well. Does it really matter if they're not doing that aspect? Or could we maybe you work with them and move them into a different role so that their attributes are really recognised? We're very diverse individuals. Hopefully we become more diverse as we age and we learn more and we grow. But there's peaks and troughs with learning. There's peaks when we want to go faster. There's times when we want to slow down. I think there needs to be more respect with that in a workplace now that is just full on, full steam ahead, and going up is seen as the only way for a career pathway. I'd really like to challenge that.
Jane, can I just jump in there? I think, sorry, Kathryn, I completely agree with you, and that is something that we had heard sort of very loudly from some of our members. Some of our members were saying, why can't our domain expertise be seen as that is what we want to do and we want to keep doing what we're doing and get really good, rather than assuming that we want to keep progressing. And we probably had the other half of our members saying that, why does everyone think I want to slow down? I want to keep progressing. So I think you're absolutely right. There's horses for courses, and we just need to be able to acknowledge and respect that people are going to want different things. And it's how we have that conversation and see that domain expertise not as giving up, but actually it's a very valuable contribution to the organisation.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for both. And I think they're very practical tips for employers to understand that people have different mindsets themselves, as to where they are in their current life and where they want to be. And but in doing that, we have to also make sure that we allow the door to be opened for those who do want to increase their skills. There's a wonderful question on the in the question box saying, my father-in-law still works at 72 years, but he owns his own business. He rejects any kind of technology to be introduced into the business. Don't know how he's going with that at the moment. But if he was to apply for a job elsewhere, he wouldn't be hired. How do we shift their mindset? Toby, you might jump into that with the Illawarra Retirement Trust.
Yeah, no, I definitely will. I think I can speak to this from two fronts. So my father is about to have his 70th birthday at the end of this year. So he does own his own law firm, or did up until recently, when he chartered his own transition to retirement, and he found a younger lawyer to come and purchase his law firm, and he's staying on for 12 months as a full-time employee for the first time in 40 years. Whilst he can assist that younger lawyer to upskill into what it takes to be a principal and own their own law firm, and he gets to enjoy a bit of life without having to take a laptop on holidays. And I can tell you Mum's very happy about that. So I understand that position, but I've also, at IRT, we've recently had a worker who is a similar age to Dad, actually. He's got a wife who's about 12 years his junior, who's still very much active in her career. He retired about 3 years ago. And then he started golf, and he did golf and all of the stereotypical things that men do after a career, a very busy career. And he went, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm used to being active. I used to contributing, and I want to do it again. So he's actually recently recommenced a role as a full-time sales consultant. And I think what we've seen here is actually tying up some of these last few threads in a little bow, in that what we've got with Tony is someone as a sales consultant who used to be a financial planner that is working with families as they're making a decision with their loved one about mum or dad moving into an aged care facility because they need that level of care. Tony understands that sort of stage of life about caring for aging parents. So he's got really high levels of empathy. He's got a really good, strong understanding of the financial and legal and other considerations that you need to make to go into aged care. Tony, unfortunately, doesn't have very good technological skills. You know, he can navigate his way around the emails and whatnot, but some of the more complex Salesforce software type things, he's just aren't his strength. So as an organisation, what we've looked at, we did the skill and capability mapping that we've all been touching on. We've gone, you know what? Tony is a really high performer in these core soft capabilities that we really need to see in this role. You know, so what we will do is we'll work with someone else in, you know, within IRT Group who's got the really good tech capabilities, but probably doesn't have the softer skills or the experience that Tony has. So they are trading off. Tony's able to pick up the tours, the interpersonal, the contacts, and he's getting fantastic results with that. And by working in partnership with someone else within the organisation to offset where there's those skill deficits, we're still delivering everything that we needed to do without any inefficiencies. And actually we're seeing improved outcomes by putting someone with that high level of capability into something that they want to do.
Yeah. Natural succession planning, reverse mentoring, upskilling. It's things for all of the things that our organisation needs.
Jane, while you're there, there's a very interesting question here in the question box about my public service employer allocates a vast amount of resources to the young grads. How do we get them to pay attention to the recruitment and employee experience of workers 45 and over? So, you know, we come now back, and we've been talking a little bit about keeping older people in the workforce and the skills that they need and helping them to do that. But if you're on the outside and you're looking for that job, and we've touched on it a bit earlier about the AI and the skills and the date of birth and so on, but how can we encourage the public service in particular to start to hire older workers?
As public service is the largest employer in the Southern Hemisphere, so we do have a lot of opportunities in this space. I think I can speak for Department of Customer Service. I can't speak for the whole of the public service. We at DCS at the moment, we're having an absolute reset of the recruitment process. And we're really looking at the life cycle and looking at the age. And so the Generations Employer Resource Group, the starting point of that was absolutely co-designed, and the Generations ERG have really been inputting to influence and raise the voice. I think that that's the really important starting point. We are keeping numbers. We are keeping that alarm, that alert. I'm very confident that we will improve that. There aren't targets. There's not priorities relating to that at the moment. But I think we need to really reflect and start to get stronger at demonstrating how valuable we are in the workforce. I think that that's the role that we certainly the Generations ERG is absolutely taking at the moment, whilst influencing the policies around those. I think it's a watch this space.
Yeah, look, thanks, Jane. The years that I worked in the public service, working at the other end of the age spectrum, contrarily, in early childhood service, the public service in New South Wales, and I can only speak about New South Wales, was almost the leader in providing. They introduced flexi time.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced the opportunity for people to take study leave. So they were really the ones who, I think they might have been one of the first ones to have maternity leave. So they were the trailblazers, and I'm kind of not seeing that in the public sector and the public service at the moment. Do you think there's any chance of, do you know if there's happens to be any discussion within the public sector about how they can come back to be a lead employer again?
Oh, I can't comment on that, but if I have any, if I'm able to achieve anything, maybe I'll be saying to you in 12 months' time, Kathryn, that I'm very confident that we're there. I do know that average length of stay in the public service now is 8 years. So we come in and out. We don't come into the public service and retire from the public service. So we're in and out, we're moving. So there's lots of scope, and I think there is potential, Kathryn. And yeah.
No, I think that's right. And I think it's important to remember that the world of all of our parents and grandparents has changed so much, where once upon a time you would get a job in the public service, and it was considered to be, that was a great success because you were then guaranteed of a job. If you think of the generations that came out of the Depression. But the good thing now is that we're taking the skills of the public service, of which there are many, and the skills of the private sector and balancing them together.
Yeah. And
Anna, I'm just wondering, in the banking sector, when it comes to actually bringing older people into the banking sector, is that likely to happen, or is there an impediment to that?
Kathryn, what I would say, and it was just a point that Jane made before, is around how do we sell the benefit of older workers. And I think one of the things we've been focused on as part of the Amplify EAG is those positive stories of the benefits of what older workers bring. So for us, it's really around that modern elder. We use language around that sort of wisdom, the experience that our older demographic employees bring. So I think there's two elements. It's how do you sort of celebrate the benefits and celebrate the positivity around older workers, which I think is absolutely how you harness the power of older workers. And then from that, really look at how does that then translate into attracting more, and attracting more through recruitment, attracting more through retention. So it's really, it's not so for us so much about targeting older workers and having that as our focus. It's more around how do we make sure it's a very positive environment. We're really clear on the benefits, and older workers are feeling like their voice is heard, and that they, they are clear on the value that they also bring. Because I do think there is an element of being a bit forgotten, and we talk about it being a bit of a sandwiched group that's feeling pressure from both aging parents through to children still at home and quite dependent still. So there's a lot of pressure on this group. And so we are trying to find the positive messages and I guess normalise some of that pressure that they are feeling at Westpac.
No, thank you for that. I'm intrigued by some questions and comments in our question box, which is really related to the fact that people are feeling that ageism is alive and well, that employers can be stone-hearted, and that there's a lack of good governance. And it's, so people are certainly informing us of their personal experiences. And of course, when you have those series of episodes in your life, it can lead to a sense of poor self-worth, and it can lead to, it can lead to illness. So the stress is very hard. It's really about creating that psychologically safe environment within the workplace and amongst employers. And I think you've all got skills in that area, and you might just want to touch on some of those other skills and areas of psychological safety, and helping HR managers understand older people and older people's work experience is still very important. Any suggestions there?
I might jump in on that one, Kathryn, because it definitely overlaps with some of the broader work that we've done at Age Matters, and Kay referenced in her introduction. But just on headline statistics, older men and women over the age of 80, over the age of 65 are the fastest growing group of homelessness in the country. Yeah. Men over the age of 85 have the highest rate of suicide in the country. Women over the age of 65 have the highest rate of attempted suicide in the country. Now, if you look at some of those things, whilst they're all wicked problems and there can be many confounding impacts that lead to those horrible situations, we know that financial independence that comes from working, we know that social connections that come from a workforce, we also know that that sense of purpose and achievement that comes when we get out of bed to do something and put our head on the pillow having achieved something, we know that all of those can act as a protective factor to any of those statistics that I mentioned earlier. So I think one thing that we need to be conscious is that whilst our working self and the personality that we create through that working self is a huge part of who we are, it's a huge part of our identity, it's not 100% of it. So there's quite often a lot of things that happen outside of the workplace that go into shaping someone's, approach and attitude towards the day or what they're doing. So there may be a resistance to learning, and it might not actually be around not wanting to learn technology. I might just be in a rough time because, in an example that we had, there was a lady over an older lady, a professional that we encountered that was accessing crisis homelessness services. So she was going in there to shower each day, to then get dressed in her professional attire to go to work, because she was fearful of the prejudice that she would have encountered from her colleagues if they knew that she was newly divorced and sleeping out of her car. So imagine the impact that that's got on her when she goes into the workplace and her willingness to do stuff. So I think we need to, as a workplace, think about this, go in with the hard head, but we've got to have a soft heart as well. Think about what are the, complete circumstances of an individual's life, and how can we support them with those things, acknowledging, no, they're not necessarily the responsibility or the cause of the workplace or of the employer, but as an employer, we've got a responsibility to care for those people that are coming through our doors as employees.
Thanks, Toby. I think that's a really important contribution to the conversation, because we do have to realise the background, if you like, to our workers. And I was horrified to hear the other day that to get priority housing, and you're absolutely right, the greatest number of or the growing number of homeless is now amongst women, and that to get priority housing you have to be 80. And I just think that's scandalous. So we have to be very mindful of where people are in their journey, whether they're young or old. We've talked a little bit about the public sector. We've talked about the private sector. I'm just interested in the unions. I'm interested in if any one of you and the panel have a view about how the unions can play a very positive role in encouraging older people in the workforce, and then transitioning them, because some of the jobs that they're doing, older people who are in the unions are doing some very hard jobs. And I think that there's some opportunities that we might be missing, and how might we actually draw the union movement into this conversation and this debate?
Well, I think the unions can have a very positive role in this, Kathryn, and I think let's take some lessons from other social movements that have taken place. You know, we've talked about individual personal responsibility. We've talked about some organisations that have gone proactively to do something. But I think if we are going to drive a serious social shift around how we approach ageism in all of its forms, especially in the workplace, we need to harness the power and positive contributions of all. And that's where I think unions could potentially wake up and be more active in advocating for the needs and rights of their older workers. If we take a human rights approach, which you know, enables and entitles all of us to the freedoms that we deserve, I think what we can do is actually start to rattle the cage and make a bit of noise for what older people should be deserving. I think we know that it is impacted by government policy, and we'd love to see more happening from a government lens. I think, unfortunately, over the last few years, we've seen ageing deprioritised at a government level. You know, it was great to have an introduction from the minister today, but in her portfolio, she's got sport, multiculturalism, seniors. You know, it's quite a hybrid mismatch. You know, gone are the days where we used to have Minister John Ajaka, who was the Minister for Seniors. You know, that was his sole job. Even at the federal level, we've got Minister Colbeck, who's the Minister for Seniors and Veterans. Now, veterans are returned servicemen and women of any age. Now, again, it's a hybrid. It's not giving the attention to seniors that we need to see if we're going to truly drive change. Because we need government to create the safe space. We sometimes need people to remind government what their role is. And that's where I think union bodies could get active. And if union bodies get active, governments create that safe space, we're going to see more older people wanting to participate actively rather than retreating to some of those horrible life circumstances I mentioned before.
Thanks, Toby. Anna and Jane, do you want to jump in on this?
Look, I think anything that improves the sense of control for an individual, rather, and the sense of purpose is only going to benefit individuals from a mental health perspective. We know that the tail from the result of COVID is going to take another couple of years for us to really truly understand the impacts on workers. So I think mental health, that longevity of health and aging well is a really important part of this discussion. But the more that we can have really proactive conversations around control and purpose, that's back on the individual to really feel like they're in control of their destiny is a really important facet of this.
And I'd like to echo that and just have one more point, Kathryn. If we think about the diversity groups that we represent, the older worker is and the older person is the one group that hopefully, if we all stay well and we stay living, we will all be part of. So it is the one group that brings us all together. There's intersectionality with a lot of other groups, but we know, so this is really important for all of us. It's not just an individual issue. This is a collective issue.
And we've only got a few minutes more, and I'm just going to go through the panel and ask the question, could we consider using the term generation-wise sage instead of older worker? Do we need to change our the lexicon? I mean, I want to take the word retirement out of the lexicon, but do we need to change the way we refer to older workers as older workers? Is there something better like generational wise sage? Any comments?
Kathryn, if I can just jump in, our EAG used to be called SAGE, then it became Prime of Life, and now we're at Amplify. So look, I'm all for a change in lexicon, but anything that draws a positive picture for this group is really important.
And I would like to echo our ERG was the mature age professionals when I took over as chair, and I'm sometimes very immature. Age doesn't matter. That's why we rebranded to Generations Voice of 45 plus, so that it was just very clear as to who we're talking to. We can't find a single word that we could replace it with. So maybe we just enjoy being an older worker. Does it matter? Does age matter? Toby?
I think I do like the wisdom thing. So wisdom's knowledge times experience. I think that's one of the best ways to portray wisdom. But it is, the lexicon is horribly confusing for everyone. Do people want to be older? Do they want to be aged, elders, seniors? I think in many forums, we juggled these different terms about choosing what is it. It's the lesser of two evils is kind of the options we're left with. But I think it's something that has to be driven at that broader social change perspective. What do people want to hear? You know, organisations we can change around. You know, both Anna and Jane have seen it shift in their time, and you know, we've always run mature workers, but in different forums, we're working in aged care and we have older people with us. So I think we need to find something that resonates with people. I think the thing about aging being, you know, the one thing we're all guaranteed if we're lucky enough, means that when everyone's responsible, no one's accountable. So we do need to find something that we can hang our hat on and start measuring whether or not we're making a true difference. You know, as the feminist movement did, as the civil rights movement did, I think we need to create a movement around fighting for the rights of wise sages, as Kathryn would say.
Indeed, Toby. And I think we can also dip our lid to the Indigenous community who refer to their seniors as elders. And even that expression of elders has such a wonderful, it's a richness, isn't it, of life and of experience. And unfortunately, my friends, we are coming towards the end of our webinar now. And I do want to thank, first of all, I want to thank all of you who are out there watching and listening for your wonderful, enriching questions that you've given us today. We've been able to walk through the areas of personal responsibility, of desire to stay working for a longer period of time, of the frameworks within organisations, the roles that government and public service might play, and all the many different ways that we know that the community will be enriched because we have a mix of workers who bring a background, who bring a difference, and who have, and our workplaces are very inclusive. If we can aim for that, then I think we've left something valuable for our communities to build on, and for our children and children's generation, our grandchildren's generation, to be enriched by the wisdom of the elders. So thank you for your questions. Can I say thank you to our three panelists, Anna Llewellyn, Jane Baker, and of course to Toby Dawson, who has been walking in these shoes for a very long period of time. Can I say thank you to K Patterson and the Australian Human Rights Commission team. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I do encourage you to click onto their website for their wonderful resources. It will be very influential and very informative. And to our marvelous Auslan interpreters, I'm always in awe of your skills. So thank you very much for your participation today and for helping our members of our community with hearing impairments to still be a part of our conversation. And we really appreciate all the work that you've been doing over many, many years. So from all of us here at the Australian Human Rights Commission, from our panelists to you, thank you for your participation, and we wish you a very happy day and a happy weekend ahead.